Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Hey, everybody. How we doing? Happy Tuesday. Welcome into a DraftKings show we call the Slate. We are here every afternoon on the East Coast, early evening, I suppose, 5 o'clock-ish. We're kicking things off on this show at 5:15. We'll take you up until about 6 o'clock. We come to you live on the DraftKings YouTube and Twitch platforms, and we're also streaming live on Twitter at DK Live is the handle, DK Nation, the title of the Twitter. Good to have you with us. We're going to talk a lot of basketball on this show today. Brendan Glasheen with two of our very best who cover the NBA over at DraftKings on our various platforms, Shirag Hira and Matt Meiselman. Shirag is a content manager at DraftKings, DK Live, DraftKings, DK Sportsbook. Matt Meiselman, our content specialist, who does a really good job covering the sportsbook angles. So we'll dive in for sure. Some breaking news. We rarely get this like before the show. Normally it happens when we have to leave and we're like, oh, this could happen. This might happen. It could not happen. And then we get off the show and then it happens or it doesn't happen. We get at least the news that it will or will not happen. We're going to get some news now. It just came in about 15 minutes ago. Marcus Smart of the Boston Celtics has been ruled out tonight with a right thigh contusion. He was listed as questionable. Smart is out. Matt Meiselman, the line has moved. Celtics are now favored by 4. The line was at 5. Does this make sense? How do you read it? And what impact does this have on betting this game?
Yeah, everything is good here. Like, the line was fair. The line is still fair. I can just keep saying that over and over again. But I think this is right. And I think this is going to surprise a lot of people because Marcus Smart just won Defensive Player of the Year. But if you follow the way like analytics writers are talking about the Defensive Player of the Year, it was entirely undeserved. Like, Marcus Smart is a great defender, but he's a guard, and the amount that, excuse me, the amount a guard can impact defense is just not the same as, let's say, Rudy Gobert. I guess we don't have to get into the whole Rudy Gobert thing right now, but big men impact the game more defensively. Marcus Smart is a really good defender, but because of his position, he just doesn't impact a game in the same way because he's only guarding one player. He's not playing so much help defense. So the reason that's relevant is because the Celtics defense really hinges more on Al Horford and Robert Williams than it does on Marcus Smart, which is going to be so counterintuitive for people because the guy just won the trophy for the best defensive player. And if you need evidence for this being like the right take, just look at the betting line now, where we're seeing not much movement for Marcus Smart. So there are two main reasons, maybe even three reasons for this. One is the thing I just said, where his defense is overvalued. The second reason is he was going to play hurt anyway. Mm-hmm. Like, this was not going to be a fully healthy Marcus Smart. We're getting like 0 of him compared to we would have gotten like 70% of him. And then I guess the third reason is the guy who I'm sure we're going to spend a lot of time talking about is Derek White, who, if you need a backup guard to replace the things that Marcus Smart can do, Derek White is like the perfect replacement. He plays defense really, really well. He can pass, he can rebound. He's an all-around good player. I think that he can just step in and kind of fill that role, 80% of the way. So sure, this hurts the Celtics, but I don't think it really hurts them that much. And I think it makes sense that the betting line's only moved by a point.
Celtics now have to be thrilled about the rest between games 2 and 3 now, huh? If they can get Smart back for game 3. I know I'm jumping ahead here, but just makes you now think like, oh yeah, the rest in between will benefit someone. It could benefit Celtics. And of course, Shams already reported that Middleton will be out for the remainder of the series, but who knows? We heard the same about Devin Booker and the Suns, and he returned for the end of that series against the Pelicans. Chirag Hero, what is your read on this game now with Marcus Smart out for the Celtics?
We have an opportunity to attack the props market. I believe that we need to see Jason Tatum be more of a facilitator and be controlling the offense. Marcus Smart was playing that de facto point guard in a sense. In the previous series against the Nets, he was averaging over like 6 assists from what I remember. So we're going to need the ball more in Tatum's hands to facilitate the offense, maybe play off the post. I really like Derek White. I thought it was a great trade when they made it. I also mentioned Daniel Tice was a great trade when they made it, when we were on the show a couple months ago because of potential injuries. So having that depth and quality players that are able to step up and be the guy for that game, I think it's really going to be imperative for tonight. And that's not saying that Derek White needs to go out here and drop 20 points or anything. Like, what we need is the Celtics to stop shooting so many threes. Sure, it's a 3-point game and everybody loves chucking threes now, and they were chucking threes at the end of the game to try to get back into it because they're pretty much down double digits the entire time.
Yep.
But attack the paint, get some fouls called, get to the free throw line, slow it down, and go from there. I believe that there's an opportunity here that if the Celtics go down 0-2, man, like, I don't know how they can come back from that with 2 games being played in Milwaukee next. Like, you're going to need Jason Tatum's best game. So what you can potentially do here is take a same game parlay with Tatum and Brown looking to step up. I'm a little bit concerned about Brown too, like, because he's dealing with the hammy, but taking this opportunity here where you could take the Celtic spread to win by 1 or take them on the money line, because the money line is minus 200. And if we go to like the spread, you can get 1.5 and minus 170. So a little bit, but adding that with Tatum's assist prop, I think brings it really all together. That's my favorite kind of way to attack this one, to get a little bit of plus money juice. And we have a special. So if you do a same game parlay, you get a profit boost too. So just playing that in there.
Yeah, we're still waiting on player props to be adjusted. Marcus Smart's name still appears here on the DraftKings Sportsbook. So, of course, for those of you, again, who are just tuning in, do not do that. Marcus Smart is not playing in this game. He has been ruled out.
Most people are going to go to the points props, but I believe that the correct play for at least this game is for Tatum to be a facilitator and go in that direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're onto something there. He's at 6.5 for assists. Let's just double check.
Yeah, I think that's already moved. Like, I don't think there's any way we would have had this line without the Smart news. Like, Tatum's average assist line is usually 5.5, or if it is 6.5, you're getting like plus 120, plus 130, 140 on the over at 6.5. I think this is already corrected. And with Derek White starting, like, I get Chirag's point, like, Tatum will pass more, but Derek White is going to assume a large majority of what Smart was doing. And again, this is an injured Smart. So it was kind of already priced in that he was going to do a little bit less offensively. Like, I really don't think that this changes the dynamic of the game all that much. And we do have the series line back up. that hasn't moved either.
Okay, so it's still plus 110.
We did also though, so maybe if Smart were out longer, this wouldn't be true, but it looks like Udoka is saying that Smart is going to have enough time to get back for game 3. So I know we're going to get into that, but like the series line basically has stayed the same too.
Plus 115, moved slightly. Was it plus 110? Derek White props are now available as well. So just saw that White assist prop at 4.5. So yeah, those are some things that have changed slightly. We'll again keep an eye on anything that changes here because of the Marcus Smart news. Just want to find out and see if we can get anything updated here on the prop side of things. So like Meiselman said, 6.5 is the number now for Tatum. Let's see, Derek White points 13.5. So White actually has the same number as Smart. So they're thinking White could take on the same amount of production as Smart. Is that a little steep though?
I think that points wise, he's going to do the same. I think minutes wise, he'll be a little lower, but I think White shoots a little more than Smart and probably passes a little less. So it makes sense that we got like a half an assist bump to Tatum and a half an assist bump to Brown and Horford. Like the passing is just going to be a little more spread out. Scoring, I think White will shoot a little more when he's out there. And then we're just going to get like, I don't know, 3 or 4 extra minutes each for Pritchard and Grant Williams, and maybe a minute or 2 extra for Robert Williams.
Yep.
This is not going to, I'd be really surprised if this looks any different or substantially different in terms of the rotation from previous games. Like the thing to keep in mind is that White was not playing that much. So it's not like the Celtics are going from Marcus Smart all the way down to, a guy that doesn't really, that we don't think of as a good player. It's not like Peyton Pritchard is going from 10 minutes to 30 minutes. It's Derek White that's going from 15 minutes to 30 plus minutes. And that's a guy like at the trade deadline, we were all so excited that he had joined the team. This was like the difference maker in terms of the odds moving at the deadline. So I don't think anything has changed there. I think what has really happened with Derek White's playing time, and maybe you guys have a different theory, but I think Pritchard just played really well in the first round and Grant Williams played really well in the first round. And Udoka has essentially rewarded them for their good production, but White's the better player compared to both of those guys.
As someone who followed the Maine Celtics very closely, maybe that's an opportunity for a Maine Celtic to.
Is it sauce time? Are we about to get sauced up?
Hopefully, we're up enough for those guys to show up. That's what I think.
Well,
I don't think those guys are playing that much unless it's a blowout, right?
Yeah, you're probably.
I could see Sauce getting 10, 12 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be great. Or like Nick Stauskas, make it rain.
Yeah, if those guys are in, we got problems.
That's who Sauce is, man. Nick Stauskas.
Stauskas, Sam Hauser, potentially. I don't know.
No, we
Aaron
need
Smith
sauce.
could play 5 minutes. I don't think that would be crazy.
Give me the hot sauce. Give me the hot sauce.
So we'll spend another second on this. Celtics coach Ime Udoka just spoke, says Marcus Smart's injury doesn't appear to be anything long-term with the 3 days off. We're assuming he'll be okay for game 3. This is, Sherrod kind of hinted at this. I mean, look, if he could go, he goes, right? He plays in the game. But yeah, they're kind of like, we're going to try and pull this off without him. I mean, going down 0-2 to go to Milwaukee, it's a bit of a stretch, and I think it's a little disrespectful to LeBron James because Giannis is not quite there yet. However, Giannis feels like he's on that trajectory of being like LeBron for that 8 to 10 year stretch where he could just keep getting to conference finals and going up 0-2, 2 wins in Boston, going back home would go a long way to make that happen. They are, and the Bucks are the 3 seed, correct?
Yep, they're the 3 seed.
Okay, so they would be at Miami, or they could host Philly if Philly makes a comeback, which I don't.
Not making a comeback.
Yeah, you're probably right. So,
but the thing is, like, it's going to be basically what I see this Eastern Conference is going to be Tatum versus Giannis for the next 5 years. Like, they're the 2 best players in the conference. Sure, somebody can come over. KD, you can't sleep on KD being the best player in the conference either, but like, what the Celtics showed is that as a team defense, you can handle him, or maybe he was sabotaging it. Who knows? But I don't know, man. Giannis's jump shots getting better. His free throws. He was feeling confident in his 3-pointer. Like, I don't know, man. This guy is going to be a problem for a really long time. And his length, strength, and defensive ability to block shots. We saw him block shots from DeAndre Ayton to save games this year. Like, he can block 7-foot centers and he can shut down guards. Like, I don't know. I see that there is a chance for him to be that LeBron-esque thing for the next decade.
How do we feel about, Shrug has hinted at this, how do we feel about a big plus money here on a Jason Tatum double-double, 235? What if Tatum has one of his best assist games of his career, understanding that maybe he has to take the reins, have a little more control of facilitating the offense? That might be something worth looking into. A Celtics player like Tatum to have a double-double?
He has not recorded 10 assists the entire season. I just looked it up in the game log.
Wow.
I mean, it's not a lot of odds. Like plus 235 is obviously a lot more than the regular line, but if we were talking plus 400, plus 500, I'd be interested. It doesn't, for a guy who I think on average gets 6 or 7 assists, to get 10, like, does he have a 30% chance to do that, which would be roughly the break-even point here? Like, there's no way it's that high. But again, he could also do this the other way. I guess we didn't really talk about his rebounding, but if Tatum just has to do more in general, I don't. Maybe the rebounds go up. Like maybe he plays the entire. Game. Maybe we
21 times this year, longer. Jason Tatum has recorded 10 or more rebounds.
Okay, so rebounding edge possibly. Anything else from this game? So might as well, what's the side you lean on? Is it Boston -4?
It's nothing. I just think everything's fair. I'm not going to bet anything on this game. Yeah, I think there's just nothing to do. Like we could talk about DFS a little. I think Derek White, whether or not you play him or fade him, is going to be super interesting because he is like, he could be 80% owned now. I mean, he's close to the minimum.
How do you?
He's going to play 30 plus minutes and he costs almost nothing. Like you probably just have to plug him. Like you can't really afford to fade him at that price.
Yep.
Because even if he were 5K, he'd probably be super owned. But at 5K, like there's more of a way he fails. This is way too cheap. So I think you just start your lineup. You just click Derek White's name, you put him in. But we're going to see like Brown get chalky or Tatum get chalky or Pritchard. Like the chalk lineup is just going to be play all the Celtics tonight. So I'll probably, I guess we'll get into the other game. But
yeah, the
player that's hurt on Memphis, who I do think will play, but is clearly banged up, is Desmond Bane.
Yep.
And DeAnthony Melton didn't play much at the end of last series, but actually had a really big game one.
Yep.
That's probably the pivot. If there's anyone to play over Derek White, like if you're in a tournament with massive amounts of people and you want a guy just in that price range who might have the upside, it's probably Melton. But I have no problem just playing both of those guys. Like I think Melton is a really strong play. But at the same time, I also think Bane's a really strong play because I think people are going to be scared off of him. But to me, like as far as betting, just quickly, like this game, we'll have a lot more to say here. I think there's a lot more value coming from this game.
I wanted to find
good Shrug for Bane.
Yeah, his ownership will be low though.
I was hoping to read off some live Twitter reaction to this Marcus Smart news from our friend Adam Kaufman.
Oh yes, please.
Adam Kaufman, let's see, 28 minutes ago. Marcus Smart is all caps out for game 2 tonight. #Celtics.
That's a very insightful tweet.
That's
breaking news.
Magic Johnson-esque there by Koff. I was hoping for a take or something, which maybe he might be crying in his pillow right now because he just doesn't know how to handle this news.
But if he was listening to us, he would understand that this is actually not a huge deal and it's going to be okay.
Okay. One more person I like when it comes to the basketball. You probably have an idea of who I'm going to say next. Julian Edlow. Celtics have ruled Marcus Smart in all caps out tonight. Big blow. Celtics shift from -5 to -4 in DK Sportsbook off the news.
Wow. It's a medium blow.
How much do we pay these guys? Like, come on. I want more information here. I want more feedback on what's happening.
They're leaving it open for us because they know we're on and they're like, I'm not going to say anything on Twitter because this slate is happening and the guys are going to cover it. So just leave it to them.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
I'm such a troublemaker. All right. Well, let's go into the other game and we can go from a sportsbook side and then we'll take the Smart news. You mentioned Bane, who probably, in my estimation, had his worst playoff game so far, Desmond Bane of the Memphis Grizzlies. So the Warriors are 2-point favorites yet again. It feels, guys, correct me if you don't feel the same way. Well, actually, don't correct me. I feel this way. Tell me if you feel the same way. That was the game Memphis had to have, right? Game 1 was the game Memphis had to have. Golden State with the Draymond ejection, foul trouble for Steph and Clay. the Grizzlies made more threes than the Warriors, which you say that out loud, you're like, wow. I mean, and you'd think Memphis probably wins the game, and Ja scores 34. Jared Jackson made some threes. Jordan Poole, though, was sensational. He made big shots. But after all of that, Scott Foster is officiating tonight's game. But after all of that, Golden State is up 1-0. They did not cover. Klay Thompson missed 2 free throws at the end of the game that could have given folks the cover. Sorry if either of you were personally affected by that.
No, I had the other side. I'm very happy about the
Okay. Wow.
You're right. We were on Memphis for sure.
Okay, good. Are you on Memphis tonight? +2. I've seen some 2.5s. It's desperation spot, right, Meiselman?
Yeah. Yes. I don't like it as much as I liked game 1.
Right.
Part of it is game 2's the even number game is going to skew a little towards the road team because you don't have the travel. Like we've talked about this. I think this is a point that both of you have raised at times throughout the years. When you get a back-to-back in the same location, the road team is already there. Like you lose a little bit of that home court advantage. But what Memphis does gain is the desperation factor. Like that's got to help motivationally a little bit. I think these are really even teams. And one of the reasons is that Andre Iguodala is not playing. And some people might not think that matters, but he's like a pretty pivotal bench player for them. And he doesn't do much on the box score, but defense, passing, rebounding, like he's a good all-around fit for them. When they go to Kevon Looney or have to play, let's say, Kuminga extra minutes, I do think they lose something there. So that brings these teams a little closer together. And I think that people may just have a bias against Memphis, the way they looked against Minnesota, where it just was an ugly series. But Memphis has been really good all year. And I also think, like we've talked a lot about how John Morant's defense sets him back. Morant's played good defense in the playoffs, like legitimately really good defense. Like if you watch him for most of the game, and I think that the scores of the games kind of bear this out, like he's really making a concerted effort on defense to really lock in. It's the playoffs. I think a lot of players do that, but he's especially notable because he let the team down a lot on defense the regular season. I don't think that's happening anymore. And I do think the Warriors are just a little overrated. Like the last point as like an overall narrative thing is, Glass, you kind of hinted at this. Jordan Poole, despite the fact that like Draymond wasn't playing in the second half, Curry had a bad game, Klay had a bad game. Morant had an amazing game and Jaren Jackson had an amazing game. And you might think, well, all of that went wrong for the Warriors, and yet they still won. But the reason they were able to do that is because Jordan Poole was playing so far over his head. And even though we'll expect that Morant and Jackson come back to earth, I also think we have to expect Jordan Poole to come back to earth. So yes, it's upsetting if you have Grizzlies series bets like I do that they didn't pull out the game, but I don't think they're out of the series yet. I still think that these are pretty even teams. If they square this up tonight, then, we're back to a pretty close series.
What are your thoughts, Chirag? Golden State -2, up 1-0 in the series.
I mean, taking a page out of Matt's book, but it's a fair line. I mean, if you could have won that game by 3 and Jordan Poole was playing extremely well, but also like we saw that Bane and Dillon Brooks didn't really step up. I expect them to definitely step it up in tonight's game. +2 is where I'm leaning. It gives me an opportunity to cover if they win and win the bet if they lose. Like, whereas on the Warriors side, they have to win, otherwise that's a losing bet. So I don't know. So maybe it's a different way of looking at it. And Matt hates sometimes my narratives and perspectives of making things up in my head to make the bet seem better. But I
don't hate it if I agree with the bet. I like Memphis.
Yeah, no, but I'm trying to rationalize it like, oh, I win if the Memphis Grizzlies win and I win if they lose. Like,
it is hard to cover a 2-point spread. Like, you do have to get a weird ending like we got last game, but those 2 points can matter. Like, it's not irrelevant. I'd probably lean towards just taking the money line.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, +110 just gives you a little bit more of that value. And if you want to play another same game parlay, like that, there's another opportunity here.
The best bet that I have for this game and series, though, is if we go into the series props. Yeah, my favorite thing, I think, is there's a line for Memphis to win the game and win the series. I think it's like probably to the right of that section. Maybe it's like even further. Is there like team to win game and win series? It was up this morning, but it could be gone because the Marcus Smart news may have just tanked all the markets.
Series total games, series
So,
correct.
okay, here we go.
Game
So
X.
if you go on the top menu into series markets and then you go to game X/series double, that's the thing. Yeah,
Okay,
so
here we go.
there we found it. So
Grizzlies
Memphis
to win game 2, Golden State to win the series.
Grizzlies to win game 2, Grizzlies to win the series. That's what I'm doing.
Plus 550.
Yeah, that's the one I like. I still think this is a competitive series, and I still think Memphis can win it. So it's basically the rationale for me is the series line's only plus 400, and I would lean towards that. But if Memphis is going to win the series, they essentially have to win this game. Like, there's no way they're going down 2-0 with 2 home games and then going into Golden State with a 2-0 series deficit and then coming back. Like, they have to win tonight or it's going to be pretty much over. So I think combining these together, it seems a little mispriced to me. Like, I think that this is essentially their only path to winning the series. A 2-0 comeback is just, maybe that's a 5% outcome. That would be pretty extraordinary if they would lost tonight and then managed to split or win both in Golden State and then come back and win 3 consecutive games if it's at that point. So I think the way to take Memphis is to combine these together. I think the pricing here is a little bit off because I do think that they have a tiny edge tonight. Like, I think maybe Memphis should be -1. And if they win tonight, the series line probably comes back down to where it was before the round started, which was about plus 200. So you're getting a lot of extra odds here.
I have a question for you. So basically, in this scenario, what you're saying is that there is value in taking this bet versus taking the Grizzlies straight up to win the series because you're getting that additional boost. And if they don't win game 2, they don't have a chance to win the series, basically. So you're saying the better way to get an additional piece of value on a bet. You're not saying that the bet's going to win. What you're saying that there is value here to be found.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, coming into the series, I thought it was 60-40 Warriors would win it. And yet I still thought the Grizzlies were a good bet at plus, I think it was 210, because at 40%, the fair line's plus 150. You're getting extra odds to get plus 210. The way you would calculate it, just like as a quick math thing, is 60% divided by 40% gets you 1.5. That's where the plus 150 minus 150 comes from. So anything above that is a good bet for the underdog if the probability is 60-40. And that's roughly what I thought it was. Now we're in a situation where the probability is probably 80-20. And the series line at plus 400 is essentially fair for that. Like, that's correct. Yeah. But plus 550 is extra odds. And I really think like the only way Memphis has any chance to win is if they win tonight. So you're just getting, to me, it's just you're getting a free 150 cents to go from plus 400 to plus 550. I still think they'll probably lose. I don't know what, tonight's close to a coin flip. And even if they win, Golden State still has an advantage with 3 of the 5 games remaining at home. But overall, the probability of Memphis winning tonight and then winning the series is probably like in the 18 to 20% range. And for that reason, plus 550 is good value. Like, to me, this is the only way to bet, like have some rough idea of what the probability is. And then are the odds high enough to justify betting given that probability? I know that other people like don't really think about this that much. Some people may think about it more than I realize, but like the only way to calculate if a bet is value is what's the probability, what are the odds, and do the odds justify the probability? Yep. That's the whole game. So that's
and also what I think about when I look at this as well, it's not something where you're going to go and say, oh, let me go make a 2, 3, 4 unit bet. It's, hey, play your standard, make 1 unit if possible, and look at it from that perspective, because Curry could turn an ankle. God willing, he doesn't, but like anybody could get hurt. Like, it's still basketball. It's still like there's still in the range of outcomes things to happen. And if you're finding value in your betting format is not all about, hey, what's my record and well, how am I playing and how many units am I up over time? Like, finding edges and hitting those edges when the probabilities are skewed in a different manner in the long run is supposed to work out.
And in the short run too, by the way. Like, okay. I know we've hinted at this on previous shows, like, oh, this way of thinking only makes sense for people with like a big bankroll and large bet sizes and lots of bets and a long time horizon. That's not the case. Like, if you had one single coin flip and you got plus 150 on that coin flip, I don't care if you only get one try at it, it's still good. Like you can't say I only get one chance, so I don't really want to do that. Like it's still an amazing bet. You got a 50-50 shot and you're getting free odds. Like it doesn't matter. So it's better if you can do it over a longer time horizon, but it's still worth thinking this way regardless. So, and yes, to that point, anything can happen. Like who thought Joel Embiid was going to be out for game 1 of this series when the previous series ended? Like this stuff is random sometimes.
Okay, so I've got a few thoughts on Meiselman's take that these are pretty even teams. You can't expect Jaren Jackson and John Morant. John Morant took 11 threes in game 1. That's the most he's taken in 2 months in the game.
Yeah, and they clearly schemed that, right? They clearly
they let him do that. Right, but that's I don't know if we see that again.
No, but I guess, yeah, it's a little tricky because Morant won't score this much, like almost certainly. That was a ceiling game for him and for Jaren Jackson, but we got a floor game out of Dillon Brooks and Desmond Bane. Yes. So I think we see Morant and Jackson come down and we see Bane and Brooks come up. And like overall, I'm not really that worried about that. Like those guys were awful. Brooks in particular, like Bane played hurt and just didn't shoot that much. Brooks just couldn't hit anything. Yep. And I guess he's not the best offensive player, but we should
expect. And he was in foul trouble too.
Yeah. Well, the fouls, I mean, I don't really understand how Grizzlies games end up like this, where there's just fouls everywhere, no matter who they're
like,
playing.
What are they doing? But, like, are they legitimately just being like, we're going to be a fouling team? Like, they just think that swiping and being aggressive is the way?
If that does continue, if that trend does continue, which of these teams has more depth? I mean, it's not even close. Like, if you took the Grizzlies bench versus the Warriors bench, the Grizzlies would destroy them. Like, the Grizzlies are the most balanced team in the whole league. Their issue is they don't have a great starting lineup. They have a really good starting lineup and a really good bench, and they're just very even. Like Brandon Clark may be their best big, and he doesn't even start. D'Anthony Melton at times looks like their best player, and he's playing like 15. He's the Derek White of the Grizzlies, is how I look at it.
And Tyus Jones led the league for the 4th year in a row to assist to turnover ratio, so he's a solid guard.
That's a good name to bring up too. On the point of Bane and Brooks. Jones was the same. He didn't do anything in game 1 either. We probably should expect him to play better in game 2 also.
Yeah, because he was in that depth lineup for them to close out that series against the Timberwolves. Because I feel like they're like special lineup where they should close games. Because I don't think starting is fully like played in, but their closing lineup should probably be Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr., Morant, and then a switcheroo based on who's performing well between Brooks, Bane, and Tyus Jones.
Here's something. I think you both might be underrating Golden State's bench a bit. I think it's pretty good.
It's a fine bench.
Defensively, they held their own without Draymond Green, I felt.
Yeah, they did. And I think
having Poole come from the bench.
Yes.
They played a little better than they normally would. And also, I'm including Gary Payton II in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
This has been great validation, by the way. Like, as much as I really want Memphis to win this series, it's heartwarming for me to see like the Gary Payton thing, how I've spent all year just hammering on this, that Gary Payton is great. So I can just lose all my money on the Grizzlies, but at least I'll have the silver lining of Gary Payton is awesome, because he's the guy guarding John Morant at the end of the game, but he's a starter now. That's why I'm saying the bench is not that great, because they've moved him into the starting lineup. Poole is a great offensive player, but he does nothing on defense. And without Iggy on the bench, it's Poole, Porter, Looney. Damian Lee's getting minutes now. Like, this Iguodala thing does have some relevance if Damian Lee is going to be the guy playing. Like, the Warriors run out of good players much quicker than the Grizzlies do. So I get your point.
Yeah.
Like, the bench has good players, but not having Iggy there, I think, hurts the bench quite a bit.
Yeah, Steve Kerr, I think, just threw Lee in there to mix it up a bit. He played 3
not
minutes.
Good.
No, he wasn't. And some other things that I think are on your side of it, if you like Memphis tonight, Golden State could very well, 2 things that I've come to find out just watching them play in this postseason. Number one, they could be totally content with a split, right? Like, they're just like, okay, this young, Grizzlies team, good for them. We did our job. We got our game. We got our split. If it doesn't go well early, or if it's a double-digit game late in the 4th quarter, maybe they just not mail it in, but they say, okay, now we're good. We got our split, moving on to game 3. Also, on the flip side, Golden State has proven, and Steph Curry actually admitted this in the post-game interview after they closed out Denver, that we have not done this in a while, like closing games. Like they're still closing series, closing games. That has not been their strong suit. So they're winning these games, but they've had to rally from behind. They've had to rally from behind in game 4 to make that close at the end. They had to rally back in game 5. Denver was leading most of that game. I realized Jokic prevented a real mismatch inside. Not as evident in this series, from my estimation. But yeah, like those Golden State, rightfully so, should be favored to win the series. They have that championship DNA, but they haven't been masters here at the end of these games in terms of like putting a team away, right? Memphis is going to hang around, I think.
At that point, maybe we'll jump to some of the other teams, but I think Phoenix is the much better team, and the conference odds have adjusted a lot. Like I think we talked about the Suns to win the West last week. They're around even money right now. Like I think the Suns are they're going to be pretty decent favorites over Golden State, or at least they should be next round. Like Memphis is nowhere near on the level that the Suns are. If the Warriors get by,
it's how they play, right? It's how they play. It's how Memphis plays is why I think the Suns are far and away the favorite.
And the Suns just like their top end is so much better than Memphis. Like Devin Booker would be the best player on the Grizzlies. Chris Paul would be the best player on the Grizzlies. I mean, John Morant's great, but like no one else is really an all-star on that team. They're just depth. The Suns have, and Mikal Bridges, like I think might be the most underrated player in the league right now. He's playing tons of minutes, like true Iron Man. And the Suns, it hurts me to say it, but I think are the best team in the NBA right now, because I really wish it were the Celtics, but I think it is Phoenix, at least by like a tiny margin, or at least it's close anyway. But what isn't close is I think they're far and away the best team in the West. So even at plus 100, I actually think there's a decent amount of value there. Like they should be able to beat Dallas and then probably beat Golden State too.
I'm going to sound like Emerson Latzia for a second, but take that shirt off, Meiselman. I mean, come on. Like, clearly, yeah, you want the Celtics to be the team you want to pick because look at the shirt you're wearing.
Yeah, but I'm not a Celtics fan. Remember, I
know.
Like them because I bet on them already. I've adopted it on purpose. I'm going to go watch if this happens next round, maybe I'll come to Boston and I'll wear my Celtics things to watch the Celtics and my Rangers things to root against the Bruins. That's how not from Boston I am. Mm-hmm. I'll just pick and choose. Just give me whatever, the Rangers are the actual fandom here. This is just for value.
Well, by the time you make it here, the Bruins might not be in it.
I know,
So on the futures market, or even the next, we can talk about the other two games too. And if you have questions, chime in, we can get to them. We have about 10 more minutes left on the show. How do we feel about the next two games? The lines are very similar. This is where it closed. Dallas, Phoenix in game 1. It closed at 6. It opened at 5 or 5.5, I think. Closed at 6. How about Dinwiddie? Had a chance for a backdoor last night. I did not see that one coming, how that game was going.
Did he really? I didn't realize it got that close. I know it was 7, but I didn't see the shot.
Oh, it was a Dinwiddie quarter 3. Wide open. Like, in his lap at the buzzer, would have made it the 4-point game. You muted, Chirag.
I had to cough.
I thought you were going to say I had Dallas because sorry to anyone.
I'm glad I had Phoenix.
There you go. No Embiid. I think no Embiid for sure in game 2. We know that.
Yeah.
And for Dallas, how do you feel about either of these two games? Do you want to touch them? Are they fair?
Philly, I think, is the bet, which is going to disgust everybody. But I think Phoenix futures are interesting, but the Phoenix series and game lines are fair. So I'm not really interested in betting those individual games right now. But I think Philly is live both for this game and for series bets. Like they looked so awful in game 1, but as far as the series is concerned, we're going to get Embiid back, I think. I think he plays game 3 or 4. He's going to wear the Batman mask. Like he's going to do the whole thing that he did 4 years ago. I think he'll be out there. But for this upcoming game, we did find out that Kyle Lowry has been ruled out already. And I just think DeAndre Jordan has to play less. Like this is the main reason why.
Did you hear Doc what he said?
I did. I don't believe him. I really don't.
Oh,
like he's going to think this over and just be like, all right, he'll play the first 4 minutes of each half, but we can't do this. Because Paul Reed was actually pretty good, and so was Millsap was decent too. They could play each of those guys 24 minutes, and like that covers your center spot. And as good of a rebounder as Bam is, like he's not a huge scoring threat. Like, you don't need a traditional center against him. You just can't play DeAndre Jordan. That's just all they have to do.
I think we agree with you, but we don't know if it's going to happen or not.
Why does Glenn think that this is
I love
a good idea? Like, everyone, like, if we could all see it on Twitter and
Brock, this guy was
world,
cut by the Lakers.
yeah, like if you're cut by the Lakers
and the Nets,
like, come on, man. Sure, he's a serviceable big that can play a few minutes here and there, but your best lineup is playing Reed. Like,
yeah, or Tobias at the 5. Like, maybe they can try, or maybe Thibault is the way to do it. Like, they are not experimenting, because you could play Matisse Thibault and have him essentially guard Bam, and you'd probably get hurt on rebounding. But like, that seems okay. That's a better option than DeAndre Jordan.
There's a reason why he's given up multiple 3-1 leads.
Yeah.
Any value in Sixers plus 2.5 games?
So I spent a decent amount of time looking at this page this morning. My concern is that the Heat are home in game 5.
Yeah.
And
yes,
there's a decent chance it's 3-1 going into that. Like, I don't think that's where the best way to attack it is. Although I do think it's a decent bet. I think the 2 ways to go about it are to look at like a game series parlay with game 2, like the way I was talking about with Memphis. That's probably only my second favorite way, though. I think really what I want to do is just bet the Sixers to cover game 2. I think that spread's inflated. And then just after they lose game 2, just wait for the Embiid news and then take them to come back and win the series from the 2-0 deficit. So maybe the bet could be Miami to win game 2 and Philly to win the series. But if you just wait and the Heat do win game 2, which they probably will, despite the fact that I think Philly covers, I think, this line should be like 5 or 6 points. The Heat deserve to be favorites. They should win. Once that happens, you're going to get like 8-1 on Philly to win the series.
Yep.
And if Embiid shows up for game 3, like, they can win 2. I don't think the Heat are better than the Sixers with both teams at full strength. I think they're pretty even, or Philly's slightly better. My one concern, though, is Embiid's thumb. Like, he'll have the face taken care of maybe, but he's still got the torn ligament in his thumb. So we've seen that like cause him to be a little reluctant to shoot from the outside. Who knows if that's any better? Maybe it's not. But if both these teams were fully healthy with a 100% Joel Embiid, I think the Sixers are the better team. So at minimum, it's at least worth keeping an eye on Embiid, looking at the series lines once we get news that maybe, if he's not back for game 3, then none of this matters because they're going to lose 4-0 probably.
My concern for you is the glass. That was a clear edge to Miami. Adebayo, Butler, and Tucker, I think, all hit overs on their rebounding props in this game. Yeah. So that would be my concern for you. I think they were out-rebounded by 10. James Harden as a primary scorer, I think those days are gone. He clearly misses the presence of Embiid, but that's would be my and look, they didn't shoot the ball great from 3, right? So maybe some positive regression. Philly makes more threes and you get there. So I could see where you're coming from on that. They were 6 of 34 from 3, 18.
Right, that's kind of what I was no, that's exactly like where I was going is Philly can't shoot this bad. And especially if they take DeAndre Jordan off the court for at least more time, like he could start and end up playing 11 minutes. That's fine. He just can't play 20 minutes. Like that would be a disaster. But the other thing, and like Sharag knows this very well, we've talked about this a lot since February, is especially without Kyle Lowry, like the Heat just are not that good. Like we've seen this team time and time again when they're supposed to have things wrapped up and they just don't. And also they were losing game 1 at halftime.
Yes. 51-50. Yep.
For all of what happened in the second half, like they played a disastrous second quarter. So they have that in them. They're not as good as people think. I think both the Bucks and Celtics are a lot better than this Miami team.
What about the Tyler Hero injury situation?
Yeah.
I think he's going to play, but
is Tyler Hero good though? Like that's
well, no,
he was pretty good in game 1, man, shooting wise.
Solid on offense. He's solid on offense. He works fine as a facilitator with Lowry out.
Yeah, but like moving from Hero to Oladipo, you lose a bit on offense, but you gain a bit on defense, and overall, I think that's pretty close to a wash. Like if Hero didn't play game 2, I don't think that would even change my opinion. I would just bet the under. Like Hero is an over machine. he definitely boosts the point scoring for the game overall because he's bad at defense and really good at offense. But aside from the total, like with the spread, I wouldn't even care if Hero plays or doesn't play. It's more, he's going to change a little bit of the dynamic of the game as far as the pace and everything, but I don't think he changes the win probability at all, really.
Okay. I think that's it, fellas. Any final thoughts? Any quick final thoughts on the DFS slate? So I know we just to, if we wanted off the top of our heads, we mentioned, okay, get Derek White in there. Okay, got it. How about we mentioned a bounce back game for Desmond Bane? Okay, got it. Who are the studs to play? To avoid chalk, because look, you mentioned it, Meiselman, Tatum, Brown, likely to be popular. What's the popular side of Memphis, Golden State?
So the popular side first for Boston, it's everybody. So maybe play some Celtics, but don't play all the Celtics because those are like all the most popular players are going to be on Boston. But then I think from Warriors, Grizzlies, look to the bench. So that could be Jordan Poole again, although I think people might be a little too excited to play him. Maybe it's more like Melton. It's Brandon Clark, I think, is going to be a little bit lower owned. I think even Morant could be a little lower owned coming off the big game because Tatum's going to look better. I think Giannis is going to look better. And then I guess the last player who I think might be actually a little bit contrarian is Steph Curry. Because like all those guys, if you're paying up, I think Tatum is the priority now without Smart there.
Yep.
And then Giannis obviously is the best. He's the best fantasy player on the slate. And then Morant probably gets more respect than Curry because of last game. So maybe even Steph Curry is like the best guy to pay up for tournaments because he probably will be the lowest owned.
Klay Thompson is 7K. Is that like...
That's insane.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
For four teams and a 2-game slate?
Yeah, I guess like Clay's weird because he can put up 50 fantasy points or 18 fantasy points because his game is predicated entirely on making threes. So like if Clay only makes 2 threes tonight,
I don't see that happening. I don't see a third in a row happening.
A third bad game in a row.
Yes.
I mean, the thing is like, I guess we could have spent more time on this, but maybe it's better for like the sake of argument because we would have been like fairly contentious and people don't like this take in general. But I don't think Klay Thompson's that good at this point in his career. Like I think Jordan Poole's better. That's a totally irrelevant thing for DFS, but I could see Klay losing minutes to Poole going forward in the playoffs. Like Poole has outplayed him for a lot of the games.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's been it's probably all in all a good problem for Steve Kerr, but it's made it a challenge. That's for sure. Especially with rumor mongering that maybe Poole's the future and they can move Thompson in the offseason, which doesn't sound right. I think they want to make it work with all of them. Since they moved Steph back in the starting lineup too, it made me feel like, how's this all going to work? And look, they won the game in game 1, but it was close in game 5, the game in which Steph returned to the starting lineup in to close out game for Denver. That's it. It's all the time we have. Great stuff, gents. Golf Show is here tomorrow. They'll be breaking down Wells Fargo. And I'm sure if anything comes across the NFL docket, I'm sure they'll touch on it and anything else on the slate. So look forward to that with Emerson, Jeff, and Reed. And best of luck, everybody, with your lineups and picks for tonight. For Matt Meiselman and Chirag Hira, you can find their work at DraftKings over on DK Live, DK Playbook. They're active on social media as well, so be sure to check them out. They do a great job covering basketball here at DraftKings. For Eamon and Daniel, Brendan Glasheen, we are here every weekday. This show airs at the 5 o'clock Eastern time window, 5 p.m. Eastern time. We also have The Sweat every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern, so check us out there. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks.
Peace.